While a CISO's job has always been difficult, in light of COVID-19, it has almost become impossible. Because literally overnight, the entire infrastructure has changed. It was all about functionality. How do we enable a remote workforce and do anything that's required? So I know many organizations took servers that were on private isolated networks and they are now accessible from the internet. They took services and rapidly moved them to a cloud-based environment. They're letting users work from home, utilizing personal computers, outdated, unprotected, unpatched systems, anything to allow people to be able to function and perform their jobs. But now it's time for the CISO to reset. Because whether we like it or not, a company might be existing from a functionality perspective, but the quickest, fastest way to cause damage, impact, and even put a company out of business is by having a massive cyber attack. And unfortunately, many companies are playing Russian roulette with their security by creating major exposures. So I've created the CISO roadmap, the top 12 things that a CISO needs to focus on in light of COVID-19. And it's broken down into 4 general categories: executive communication, technology, team, and employees. And under each one, we have 2 to 4 items that they need to focus on in order to reset, revamp, and make security the important priority that it needs to be in this time of crisis. So the first area is executive communication. One of the big reasons why security fails is because there is not an open communication channel between security and the executive team. The executive has one perception of reality and technology has a completely different view. So the first item on the CISO roadmap is making sure the executives understand the new risks that are now presented to them. Moving to a cloud, having everyone work from home, utilizing personal computers, that's a whole new set of risks. Essentially, security needs to reset. At the beginning of 2020, most companies had a security roadmap based on the current risks they thought they were facing this year. Nobody could have anticipated what happened with COVID-19. It's a new ball game, it's a new environment, and it's a whole new level of risk. So a CISO needs to go in and create a risk matrix. Very simple. Here are the risks. This is the likelihood of them occurring. This is the cost if they occur, and this is the cost to fix them. And they need to go back to the executives and say, listen, all of the previous analysis that we performed and the current security roadmap is no longer valid. We need to reset, revamp, and build a new security roadmap to protect and secure the organization. And that all starts with a very clear understanding of risk. So based on all the new risks that have been introduced by all the changes that have occurred to support a remote workforce, we need to create a new risk matrix with all of the new risks, the likelihood of them occurring, the cost if they occur, and the cost to fix them. The second item on a CISO roadmap, still under executive communication, is there needs to be clear metrics that can be communicated to the executive team. There needs to be a security dashboard so the execs really understand what the issues and challenges are. For example, since COVID-19, the number of attacks against organizations have increased significantly. That needs to be a metric. The number of exposed endpoints have also increased. That needs to be a metric. The number of servers that now are accessible from the internet, another metric. So we need to start putting together metrics so the executives can understand the factual data. One of the problems that security often does with executives is they talk in vague terms. Things are bad, things are low, things are medium, things can happen. It's time we use numbers. We gotta give clear metrics in terms of attacks and exposure points. The third key area on the CISO roadmap is we need to start working with executives to reduce the attack vectors. Most companies did anything possible to support a remote workforce. It literally happened overnight, and I was on the call with many execs where they're like, we told our team, do whatever's necessary. Functionality, functionality, functionality. If you need to take critical sensitive servers and put them on the internet, do it. You need to upload data to the cloud, do it. You need to let people use outdated Windows 7 computers, do it, do it, do it. Now that the organization is up and running, we now have to revisit all the new attack vectors and start to reduce them. Do we really need to allow this level and that level of access? And we need to stop our current practice of creating an environment that's very offensive friendly and put it back to a defensive friendly environment. So our first 3 items that are under executive communication for a CISO roadmap is first, understanding of the risk. Second, create clear metrics to communicate to executives. And third, we need to focus on reducing the attack vector. The next area we focus on is technology. The 4th item on the CISO roadmap under technology is reassess the cloud-based environment. Many companies moved to free-based cloud services. Free cloud services are good for personal use with data that you don't mind being shared. Free doesn't mean free. It means your data is the service and you are bartering for that functionality. In a commercial business environment, you must not use free. You have to use the commercial version. So it's important that the CISOs review the cloud-based environment, assess any exposure points, and create an upgrade plan to protect and secure that environment. The 5th area under technology is now that everyone is accessing resources remotely over the internet, 2-factor authentication or 2FA. We can no longer accept passwords. Saying that all of our critical data, all of our critical functionality is only protected with a user ID and a password is unacceptable. We need to move to 2-factor authentication. Number 6 is alerting. We are going to be attacked and we are not going to be able to prevent all attacks. Prevention is ideal, but detection is a must. We need to recognize that some attacks will sneak through. Remember, preventive technologies can only prevent things that are 100% bad 100% of the time. If something is bad 70 or 80% of the time, we have to allow it through. So we need to put a much higher focus on alerting. Remember, security is not about stopping the attack. It's about detecting the attack in a timely manner. And then number 7, still under technology, is filtering of emails. Phishing attacks have increased significantly, and many of these emails are easily making it to the endpoint because all of the internal filtering is gone. When somebody works in an office, there's an entire cadre of security devices that filter, stop, and remove malicious content in email. Now all of a sudden, that endpoint is now in somebody's home, directly connected to the internet, and a lot of that technology is gone. So we have to make hard decisions, and one of them might be to block attachments and embedded links from any unknown addresses. Hard times require hard measures, and revisiting the email and the exposure to phishing must be on the CISO roadmap. Then we move to team. With team, number 8 is we need to reassess security. A lot of things have changed, a lot of things are different, and a lot of assumptions we made in January are no longer true today. So you need to have your team go in and do a virtual assessment of the environment to better understand what's happening and what's occurring. So we have number 8 is reassessing our security in light of all these changes. And then 9 is actually performing a virtual assessment. We need to recognize that security needs to be revisited. The security risk matrix we had no longer applies. And then we need to perform a virtual assessment. Number 10 is focus on monitoring. Now that people are at home, they're not in the office, they're not monitoring the SOC, there's limited staffing. We need to figure out ways to be able to do remote monitoring, analysis, and find and catch that attacker in a timely manner. Then our 4th category is employees, and we have our last 2 items. Number 11 is we need to raise awareness and do more training on the new threats. I know many employees, maybe once a quarter or once a year, had general cybersecurity training. Well, now with COVID-19, it's a whole new ballgame. They're directly accessible from the internet, they're exposed, emails are getting in, there's a much higher amount of phishing, and we need to retrain and raise the awareness with our employees so they can properly protect and limit their exposure to those new threats. And finally, number 12 is we need to increase the phishing campaigns. Phishing campaigns where we're testing our users out, we need to start increasing the frequency and focusing in on COVID-19 specific attacks to train those users that even though it's emotional, even though they're concerned about it, just because it says COVID-19, they shouldn't click on those links. Just to review the CISO roadmap, the top 12 items that every CISO needs to focus on under executive communication is category 1. The first item is making sure that executives understand the risk with a risk matrix. Number 2 is make sure there's clear metrics to track. Number 3 is working on reducing the attack vector. Those are the 3 areas under executive communication. Then under the technology, the 4th item is we need to reassess our cloud-based environment. Free is not free, and we need to make sure we're utilizing commercial cloud-based with proper security. Number 5 is making sure that all authentication is 2-factor and we're not using passwords for accessing anything that's accessible on the internet. Number 6 is we need to have alerting, because remember, security is not about preventing the attacker, but controlling and minimizing the damage. Number 7 is better filtering of email. Now that everyone's working at home, we need to better filter attachments and embedded links. Then we move under team. Number 8 under team is reassess our security. We have a new environment, a new infrastructure, a lot has changed. We need to re-look at our risks and our roadmap. Number 9 is we need to perform a virtual assessment. Even though people are at home, we need to reassess the new environment, understand those exposures and start fixing and remediating them. 10 is focus on monitoring, making sure we can catch, understand, and find the adversary. Then finally, under employees, we have number 11, do awareness training on all the new threats. The new threats and the new exposures have increased, and our employees need to be aware of them. And finally, number 12, we need to increase the phishing campaign specific to COVID-19 to train people on what the exposures are and make sure they resist the temptation from clicking on links or opening attachments. So by following these core 12 areas, the CISO can now have a clear roadmap of what they need to focus on and what they need to address. I am Dr. Eric Cole from Secure Anchor Consulting, and I'm on a mission to make cyberspace safe.